This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, thank you, Susan. So I will call the meeting to order. One thing, well, let me do a couple of things here first. Emergency exits, you all know your houses and where you are, so you can deal with that. Diane Walmsley will not be joining us tonight. I don't know who she sent her email to. Bear with me. Earlier this week, it was on Tuesday. Diane, due to personal commitments, has resigned from the planning committee, and that so I have responded to her and wish her well with her personal commitments. It's timely given the fact that the Mono Council has put out the request for people to put their names forward for the next term of council. But just to explain why Diane isn't here. Point number 3 then. Declarations of pecuniary interest. If anybody has any, they can say them now or at any point during the meeting. Approval of the agenda, please. We've got it. If somebody could move, Barbara moving to approve it, to second that, please.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jerry. And anybody opposed to that? And seeing none, so the agenda is approved. Item number 5, approval of the minutes, which was our session 03/2022. That was Thursday, August 18. Susan emailed those to us, and that. So I'm hoping that you were able to look at those. And that, are there any corrections, changes, additions to those minutes of the Thursday 18/2022 meeting?
I didn't sleep through that meeting, Bob, but I've got to admit that I sat at the kitchen table and forgot all about it till 20 after 7, and I had it in my calendar. But anyway, I have read it all. And it looks like it was a really good discussion, but I was not in attendance.
Yeah, well, Jerry, I figured you were busy with it. It was that is August. You're a farmer. I figured you were involved with this something farming. So can I have someone, Barbara or John, move to approve those minutes, please?
I shall move.
Moved by John. Thank you, Barbara. That means seconded. And anybody who doesn't support that, seeing none, those minutes are approved. Okay, point number 6 on our agenda, public question period. I don't see anybody on the screen here. If there's anybody that's phoned in or whatever, any public questions, please? And hearing none, that moves us quickly on to our real reason for having our meeting here tonight, which is to talk about Bill 109, Bill 23. I was thinking about this. Some wise person once said that the only constant is change. And with these bills, which have already passed, there's going to be some change. And that really is the main point of having this meeting here. Just by way of introduction, we're not debating the merits of these bills. You're welcome to get together with friends and do that. But the most important thing here, and it is especially important in light of the fact that council has put out the request for people to volunteer for the committees for the next 4 years. And that so there will be some changes. We don't know what they all are to the way the planning committee works. Let me say this, and I had a long discussion with our mayor, John Creelman, yesterday, I think. The one thing that is not changing is Mono Council's commitment to meaningful resident engagement on planning applications and on planning issues. So John assured me of that, and I think evidence the fact that they're asking for residents to put their names forward for the planning committee really emphasizes Mono Council's commitment to the good work that the planning committees have done over the years. So again, that's one thing that will not change. Having said that, there are going to be some changes the way we do things and that. And with that, David, with that introduction, let me turn it over to you. And that he's not going to go through all of these bills. That would take a long time, but I've asked David to, summarize what some of the changes might be, and that so that when all of us are considering whether to put our name in for the next 4 years, whether that affects what you want to do or what you don't want to do. Just for the record, I have put my name in and asked to be on the planning committee again, but I'm not asking anybody else. That's what you're doing. That's your business. So David, with that, let me turn it over to you, please.
Okay, thanks, Bob. The meeting tonight is it's a discussion. It's a review, and I hope and sure will be a collaborative examination of the draft amendment we've got, the official plan amendment, what we're calling right now draft 44, to see if there's other measures we need to think about and install in that amendment before it comes back to council as a final amendment to deal with Bill 109. So what's Bill 109? Well, it's the More Homes for Everyone Act. And part of the fundamental purpose of it is to reduce timelines, frankly, or harden timelines for review of various applications. That is noted on page 2 of the December report, which was a follow-up from the November 8th report.
David, that's the December 13th, 2022 one that Susan included in our packages?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just to be clear, thank you.
So I think for tonight, I think we should really try and focus on how, I'm just going to call it plan committee instead of PENHC because it'd be a bit of a tongue twister. How plan committee will probably need to be more actively involved in planning applications. So what's happened is the province, in their infinite wisdom, has decided to get more homes. They're going to harden and fast line deadlines for review. Well, that in itself is not a bad thing, but if you don't meet them, they haven't really thought this through, and every municipality has the same mindset. If you don't meet them, then you got to start regurgitating some of those fees back to the applicant. For Mono, it's not cataclysmic. Why? Because we have a fee and deposit system, right? We defer to out-of-house engineering department, Burnside, and out-of-house legal team, Thompson Rogers, for application-related reviews and matters of that sort. So unlike, I'll just pick on the town of Newmarket for a moment. Town of Newmarket has now, not always, but in the last few years have had, and for some time, their own engineering department. But problem in the past, I'm going to say decade, they probably got now an in-house legal department. I'm pretty sure, I don't know, but I'm going to guess they do. Barrie does. That change happened about 10 years ago, maybe less. So we'll pick on Barrie because I know for sure they have an in-house legal team. So what happened there is that once the legal team became in-house, then an application, whether it was for a zoning amendment or official plan amendment or whatever else, had to require fees to, on the average, cover the cost of those reviews. The reviews from who? The in-house engineering department, the in-house planning department, the in-house public works department. And most municipalities have always had an in-house public works department and the in-house legal department. So their fees are bigger. They're larger for that reason. Mono has an arm's length legal consulting firm we deal with, and the same for engineering. So the fees we charge are lesser because we have in-house planning, we have in-house public works, but we use a deposit system, so a fee and deposit to pay invoices that come in from the legal team, Thompson Rogers, and or engineering, Burnside. And if there's any money left over in the pot, the deposit pot at the end of the application, those monies are returned to the applicant. And it's worked out very well, and it's a good model for smaller municipalities. So to my point, Bill 109 says if we don't meet the deadlines for refunding, the worst case scenario, so let's just take site plan agreement, okay, in that chart, page 2 or page 3? Page 2. If we don't get an approval out within 120 days, we have to regurgitate 100% of the fee back to the applicant, which is $5,000. That's not going to break the mono bank, but it's got bad optics. We don't really want to go there regardless. So like larger municipalities, one of the closest ones being Caledon, that had a rather in-depth report on this. We're talking thousands and thousands of dollars in Caledon. In similar fashion, Mono also doesn't want to regurgitate fees, but for kind of a different reason. It just is bad optics, and we don't really want to have to do it for that reason. It's not going to, I think, break the Mono bank. Whereas in Caledon or Toronto or other municipalities like that, it could have an impact, a financial impact. So all municipalities leading up to this approval and enactment of Bill 109 thought, well, what do we do? And it became obvious enough that to respond to these deadlines and meet them, a more rigorous pre-consultation process would be required, so that comments, more robust comments, more fulsome comments from commenting agencies that would normally see the application after it was received and deemed complete would now proceed notice of complete application. We're putting the cart before the horse, and that's what most I'm sure all municipalities are doing the same. I'd be hard pressed to find one that's not doing that. So what we have to do is so the applicant comes in, let's try to simplify this. So Doug, the developer, comes in and says, Dave, I bought some land in Mono. I think it's good for it's on Highway 9. I think it's good for redesignation to commercial and correspondingly zoned highway commercial. No, I'm going to have to go through a site plan application too. It's for the car dealership. Let's say it's that 5-6 acres. When that application comes in, we have, with the fee, we have 30 days to deem it to be complete or not. Okay, for those who don't understand complete application, let me just sidestep for a minute, talk just briefly about that. Years gone by, certainly my days in Barrie, some applicants, we'll call them the 2%ers for lack of a better phrase, would come in and have a half-baked application, say 5 or 6 page application form. They'd have page 1 and the last one signed, and I'll be back later with my fee, and they date it, and in it would come. I'm exaggerating a little bit to make my point, but not too far off the mark. 3 weeks later, we might see the fee. A few weeks later, we might see a report for natural heritage or engineering. 2 months later, we might actually have had a complete application. And then a month or two later than that, the dear applicant saying, what's taking so long? Have you not given me a decision yet? Never mind approval. Well, this came in dribs and drabs, Doug. And so what happened is the municipalities said to the province, we need some form of complete application marker so that the clock doesn't start ticking until these things are complete. That's what complete application is. So it remains important. It's still important with respect to Bill 109 because of the deadlines. After it's complete with Bill 109, we now have to get decisions approved or denied within those timeframes on that chart. If you don't, you start regurgitating a percentage of the fees as shown there. As I said earlier, for some municipalities with all in-house departments, that has a financial impact. For Mono, it's just optics, doesn't look good. And we don't want to do this. We don't want to have to regurgitate fees for that reason, to some lesser extent, the financial reason. So we've got to front end this stuff a bit now. We've got to say to the agencies before we deem Doug's application complete. Oh, by the way, now he understands, and we've got something reasonably complete. Maybe it's, it's fulsome. It's a full application form. There's a planning justification report. The key reports are there: a functional servicing report, a traffic impact study. He may have forgotten the natural heritage study because there's a small patch of trees in the back, and he hasn't thought about that. So it's almost complete, but it's not bad. But we still need that report before we deem it complete. But in the meantime, we've got to go and get fulsome comments from agencies. And what would typically be a review by planning committee down the road, either before a statutory public meeting or after, we've now got to be more mindful of these time deadlines. And so the thinking is we're probably going to have to get planning committee involved sooner than later, which means before we deem the application complete, which means planning committee is going to have to wear one hat as sort of a functioning, I don't want to say commenting agency, but in a way similar to that, have comments or recommendations on it. And then the other part of Bill 109 is it delegates approvals to a committee of council or a staff member. Now, I've been so busy with other stuff, I've got to go back and read the resolution that council gave us, but I know that it did delegate decision-making power to me, and I think it also said committee. I've got to pull that up. In my discussions with Bob preceding this meeting, as I said to you, Bob, I want to have a lot of optics. It's not that I can't make a confident decision, but I think in as many cases as I can, I want to have planning committee involved for the sake of optics, for the sake of clarity and public confidence more than anything. Not that I'm going to make a nefarious decision, but still it's good to have, members on a committee representing the broader public to try and be involved. I guess the one thing that I'm struggling with is in the odd scenario where, there's a flu outbreak and 4 members of committee the day before the meeting can't make it. And I'm talking to Bob and saying, well, if we don't have quorum and we really need to make a decision on this tomorrow, or we're going to hit the deadline, how does a baton of authority or to confer or reaffirm decision-making authority go, say, from committee through Bob to me in a case like that? There's a lot there. What you've got in front of you are just 2 reports. There's a wide body of information on the internet that's still on these 2 topics, 23 and 09. I think the key focus should be on Bill 109. Why? Just switching gears here now to Bill 23, is because Bill 23 is it doesn't have any leeway for how we have to deal with things. It sets out parameters that have amended various acts of legislation, and that's it. And we could talk about Bill 23 later, of course. Bill 109 has more direct influence for committee and how we deal with decision making going forward.
So David, in that case, though, council would still be like if the committee, planning committee couldn't go or couldn't do it or whatever, council will still have final say on it, will they not?
Yep.
Yes,
On
council
an
still gets
approval?
decision. Well, there's,
So they might have to bite the bullet in some cases and give the
if it,
approval.
yeah, and decision isn't, the decision-making authority that's been delegated isn't for anything. So excuse me, I should correct. That's for the lifting of a holding symbol, which is pretty straightforward, minor zoning amendments, and temporary use. So if it was, so going back to Doug's application, Doug the developer, that is a decision that would be made by council. Correct, Jerry. The challenge is to get it in front of council before these deadlines are triggered.
Okay. John, you have your hand up.
Well, I understand the how you're corralling this immediate issue, but if you might indulge me, I do think that bills 23 and 109 are related, and there may be a solution in one that's created by a problem in the other. And so I'll just, if I might, I just wanted to say that, I mean, some of what I've read, I do ask myself, well, that may apply to Newmarket or may apply to Barrie, but it really doesn't apply to Mono, because we have set by the province already the limits to growth, the number of new residences, the population growth. That's a set piece, and forecloses on Mono taking on all of the requirements of a Newmarket or Barrie. But that having been said, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things on Bill 23, because that I don't think I've seen commented on very much, but which I think are lead to your question, David, about what is a way forward on this. So just to give you a couple of examples of positives in Bill 23, their redefinition of watercourse. I mean, that may sound pretty nerdy, but it's pretty fundamental to how the environment is handled throughout Southern Ontario. And they've brought in a definition which is much closer to the definition that we used in the development of our natural heritage system for Mono than the conservation authorities have been using. The conservation authorities have been using a definition that basically a watercourse in their mapping is any depression that at some time in the year might have a little bit of spring runoff and may not in next spring, for example, unless we get some snow. So they've defined it as a defined channel having a bed and banks and sides in which a flow of water regularly or continuously occurs. So this changes conservation authority business. And I might point out, this is one of the reasons that I was requesting an amendment of the county official plans schedule, where it has, I'll just give you a concrete example. You take the old Clarence Rutledge farm on County Road 8, just east of Mono Center. I mean, on that 100 acres, the province maps 4 watercourses, the Conservation Authority maps 5 watercourses, and there aren't any watercourses. So, that's a good thing. But it also brings pressure on the conservation authorities to rein in their permitting exercises around, which keeps a lot of money flowing to them in the vicinity of these fictitious waterways. So, and the other thing about reining in conservation authorities, I mean, it's too bad that, the bad practices of the big urban ones like CBCA and TRCA are visited on the smaller ones. But, I just cast back our work in trying to deal with the Credit Valley Conservation Authority at Island Lake and their $40 million plan for what I consider total overdevelopment, way beyond their original. So I just pose those as elements that we're not quite sure of in terms of how in Bill 23, conservation authorities are going to be changing their business and their modeling and their staffing. Personally, I think at the present time that the conservation authorities are not giving Mono good service when it comes to their requested comments on environmental impacts with regard to development applications. I think they're tardy, and in some cases, they're just not there. So for example, where's the conservation authority with regard to commenting on the Dufferin County official plan amendments and those schedules? I mean, they're nowhere. So, so let me put it this way. So you're posing a problem is, how do we get environmental comment? So let me give you an alternative approach, which is, what if Dufferin was to get in touch with the 4 or 5 relevant conservation authorities and ask them how they are going to react to this situation because of these timing issues? Because I think the conclusion or the alternate approach that Mono and Dufferin need to be taking is to become more self-sufficient. By that I mean the county of Dufferin needs to have a land use planner. They can't have an official plan and not have a land use planner. Like they may have hired one, but so far the person hasn't hit the ground running. Now, most upper tier municipalities also have environmental planners. If not directly on staff, they have them on retainer. In the same way as we might have an engineering advisory service on retainer from Burnside, you know, other municipalities, you know, look to that advice and to get that paid for, and it's paid for by the development charges, but it's done on a more timely manner because it's done more professionally than the current service we're getting from the conservation authorities, in my humble opinion. So I pose that to you as, you know, don't think that you're going to be able to get or should be asking from a volunteer committee the kind of professional environmental or impact assessment advice that you might want for a development application, and which should be provided by a professional who could be retained by the county. That would be great, or retained, hired by the county. But you know, I'm not saying that Mono necessarily should, you know, we shouldn't hire somebody, but we may want to retain somebody. But first, we should take it to Dufferin County and say, this is all of our problems. What are you going to do as a county to service us as a lower tier municipality? Because that's what the county is supposed to be doing, but they don't. So anyway, that's a little preachy, but but I would ask you to take seriously that advice, which is to look at alternatives other than just panicking about the deadlines and not getting the best advice possible. There are other means of getting that consultation and that commenting service. And so I'd be pleased to, you know, give you examples of municipalities that are doing that, or you know, consultants that are on retainer to municipalities to provide that service. Now,
No, and I think you make a very good point, and I am going to address that once everybody's had an opportunity to.
So I'll just finish
Yeah.
things here.
Yeah.
So one of the real downsides that's being played to us by everybody who's commenting on these bills is, of course, the major downside being the reduction in development charges, which are going to mean that for building infrastructure, for example, in the future, it's going to have to come out of the property taxpayer rather than the proponent or the developer. And that really is unfortunate. And I just, you know, I can't predict where that's going to take us and our tax bills. But, you know, I do think some creative thinking needs to be brought to this as well, with regard to, what if we just don't provide requested infrastructure? What if it's put on schedules that just happen to be tailored to the ability of the town to pay, rather than of the requirements of, say, a new Hilton hotel to need some attention of some sort or other from the town? So I think we should think about it creatively and take to heart that we don't, my perception is that we don't always show enough modesty in our development charges. So I just think to the instance, I think 2 or 3 meetings ago, of the Committee of Adjustment, where we were dealing up on the 7th line east, north of the 20th, where I think all that was being asked for was a minor variance to do with where to build a house or where to access the road on the property. And oh, I know it was a variance of a flip of property from one between 2 adjacent properties. At any rate, what the town staff did, is told them that they could have that, but only if they kicked in $100,000 to put a turnaround at the end of the 7th line. And I can tell you that, that has caused so much derision amongst local or farmers in the area, who basically say, well, we just bring in 3 dump truck loads and dump it and flatten it out, and it's done. And what is this $100,000 charge? So what I'm getting at is we should, on that particular matter, which is of such sensitivities, the development charges, we should really be very sensitive ourselves and cautious about what we do to the people who come to our front desk asking for our advice and assistance and guidance. Don't automatically assume that because they're asking for permission, there's a lot of modest individuals, pensioners, for example, in Mono, that come to the front desk for permissions. And I think if we were generous with regard to not being too forceful with development charges, it would make us more friendly in our own town around what people are asking for. And I don't want to stray into a real example, but I know a real example where someone came to the front desk and asked for advice about a severance, which is permitted by our official plan, and they left considering herself belittled and bullied, and left completely mortified, and the family, as a result, lost all of their 4th generation farm, and much of this had to do with the development charges they would have to kick in for, even though it was only a matter of the monies being on loan, because they would have eventually come back. It was just, development charges are an interaction that I'm sure David has learned in his experience to be quite sensitive about and to work around, and we should do that. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox, but I think that one idea of aggregating our requirements with regard to planning, environmental, and natural heritage advice into advice on planning applications, around Dufferin, and just see, what's a way to do it if we were to look for something that's better and more professional than the advice we're getting from conservation authorities, who may be struggling to provide any such advice going forward.
their basket of responsibilities that, as you've alluded to, John, have been curtailed under Bill 23.
Right.
Right? They've been. I don't need to get into all the details, but the previous exercise of bringing, of reviewing development applications has been wiped off the table, and they are to deal solely with the regulation,
Right.
the Conservation Authority Act and regulations pertaining to watershed management broadly.
So
That's
asking for their
as well
advice
as reduction
as
in
we've been
DCA,
doing.
that you've also alluded to as a separate aspect of Bill 23. Yeah.
So asking for their advice as we have been doing, let alone asking for it to be done more quickly, as we've also been trying to do, I don't think it's the way to go forward. We have to think of an alternative that brings some professional advice into it. And I think consultant on retainer, and I wouldn't hire Burnside because they're providing the engineering side of the equation, so to speak. But there are other consultants or professionals that can provide those services.
Yeah, we because of Bill 109 and its requirements, we will probably have to do that. We're going to have to transfer that responsibility for natural heritage and ecology review to an independent consultant. And there may be some benefits out of that, both cost-wise and efficiency-wise. So, I mean, I think
there are solutions to getting timely feedback. And I have written something down. I will get into it after Barbara and Jerry have had an opportunity to express their opinions or ask questions. But there are solutions, and I've talked with David about this. I've talked with Mayor Creelman yesterday about this. So anyhow, Barbara, let's I'll get into that after Barbara and Jerry have talked. Barbara?
Okay, I'd like to go back to this pre-consultations, and reading the information that you've sent out. It is my understanding with the pre-consultation, we do not make recommendations. So basically, we're just a sounding board for the general public. Am I correct in that?
you make recommendations, you don't make decisions. But what Bill 109 is saying is that a council can confer some things they used to make decisions on to a staff member or a committee. And because they're fundamentally planning related, I mean, I know committee of adjustment also deals with planning and management, but it's a defined matter. It's incongruencies against the zoning bylaw. I don't think incongruence is the right word. Requests for relief from provisions of the zoning bylaw.
Variance.
Planning can,
Now,
yeah, variance and consent, as well as consents. Planning committee deals with a broader list of things other than requests for relief from aspects of the zoning bylaw.
I think I can bring some clarity to this because Barbara, you are absolutely right.
can I add a bit more though?
Yes, of course, please.
With that in mind, and the fact that you have to go to various agencies for their comments, what are we going to base our recommendations on? Because there will be no time lapse. So in fact, we will be sitting reading the application without any backup information. So it's almost a vicious circle. Past experiences have shown me that other government departments, the NEC, whatever, conservation, do not respond in a timely manner. So I think you're almost ready to stop before you start. And on another thing, and I'll bring this up later, on Bill 23, Section 6 is completely eliminated the heritage registry. So where do you go from there? And that wasn't addressed in this report, by the way, and I think it should be, because we have 435 homes that are designated or on the registry that aren't designated. And under this, and I suspect the grandfather clause will not apply, unless we designate them within 2 years of putting them on the registry, they will be deemed no longer necessary and Mono will be obligated to remove them, and then we can't put them back on for at least another 5 years. So it's almost eliminated the heritage properties. Anyway, that's it for now. I had some notes and I can't figure where I put them. So if I sound a little disjointed, it's because this whole stretch of all of this completely confuses me. And I think the only people that are going to get any benefit out of it are the developers. So there you go from there.
That's what it's all about. Absolutely.
Well, and that is a possibility. Barbara, Jerry, before I ask for your comments and questions, but with what Barbara has brought up there, while it's fresh in my mind, and I've talked with David about this, in fact, the role of the planning committee, and if we look to that December 13 planning report, go to page 16 and 17 on that. The planning committee becomes basically another commenting agency. And in the past, we've been used to getting things from all these other ones that are listed on page 16 and 17 to make our decisions. Under this new system and with deadlines, the planning committee, and I've talked with David about this, like it or not, but I think it actually works out just fine. The planning committee is a commenting agency, and we don't need to know all of the stuff from the MTO and whatever. What are we commenting on? We're the feedback from residents. We are residents, this is what the planning committee, as a commenting agency, will make recommendations to council based on discussions, planning committee public meetings with residents, and that's what we'll talk about. And if we haven't heard from the Ministry of Environment or the MTO or whatever, so be it. But we still have a valuable role in this whole process for instance, the Aragon proposal for Highway 10 north of the Royal Chev Olds. There's going to be a long list of residents who are going to object to it, and that's what the planning committee may well focus on. And for me, I'm okay with that. So, this was something that I was going to say. Again, Dave and Susan have done a great job.
Bob, what you're talking about is a role that ignore the planning system. What you're talking about is the role that council is supposed to play when a community development occurs. They need to seek the ratepayers and the neighbors' advice and take it to heart. They can't download that to a volunteer committee. Like what I think our advice I quite accept that you may be willing to take that on, but you should not be willing to take it on and let council off the hook for doing the same thing. And I think our recommendation to council needs to be about, well, even at PENHC, if there was timely professional advice that came into us of our, not from those commenting agencies, but from, specialists on retainer, then we would have more informed advice for council than
Well,
just duplicating what councillors are supposed to do with regard to public opinion anyway.
but John, we always have. I've been on the planning committee for what, 26, 27 years. And the planning committee has always been the first line of getting feedback from residents. And when we made our recommendations to council, it was because we had those 2 or 3 hour meetings with residents and that. So what I'm suggesting doesn't change anything at all.
Well, but if we go on with the way we're meeting now, always in COVID, always online, and we never meet with the public at all, then if that's the new way going forward, we have to adjust to that too.
Agreed.
Right,
Yep.
about the way it used to be.
Yeah, but you know, my point here is, you know, again, and look at all of those, page 16 and 17. Those are all the commenting agencies, but we can still provide the planning committee in the absence of something from the Ministry of Environment, or the absence of something from the fire prevention officer or the MTO. We can still provide a valuable service to this whole process that you know, and you know, with residents, again, residents, you know, feedback, opinions regarding planning applications, and that, and you know, that can be that's an extremely important thing. And if we do that and give that information to council, and in the event that we might have something from some of these other commenting agencies, we can include that as well. But you know, this is something that perhaps our focus changes a little bit, and that, but it is still an amazingly valuable exercise and process to do. You know, I have phone calls from residents saying, does this mean that we're not going to be able to express our opinions about these things anymore? You know, and this was the question that I asked John Creelman yesterday. And the answer is no. Yes, of course you're going to be able to do that. But so you know what I'm saying here is we become a commenting agency of sorts, a commenting committee, and that's a good thing.
I understand and I support that, Bob. I continue to be worried about these deadlines, as David was reflecting on, and the fact that we may need alternative sources of defensible expert advice. Because remember that all of these decisions that are taken can go to a hearing. And if we just say, oh, well, that's what the public wanted, we're in a weaker position than if we say, well, that's what the public wanted. And this was our expert opinion that we got on the matter that we would like to bring to this decision as well.
No, I agree with you. You are right. So, Jerry,
Just keep in mind. Sorry, Bob. Go ahead. I'll finish after you. I'll comment after you.
yeah, Jerry.
Yeah, I agree with everything that John has said, and I truly think that I think, yes, we've done good things and one thing or another on our planning committee, and I think we will continue to do that. But I really think at this point in time that the council is maybe going to have to put some of the hook, I guess, back with David when it comes down to this, and they can't just use the planning committee as the we're the sounding board, yes, but we're not going to be the final say on it. I think that's what I'm saying, really. And I fully agree that the conservation authorities have actually, and this is a bug of mine, so I shouldn't carry on, but they, John has said it very well. They've left us hanging on the hook on a lot of applications, and left some of the residents on the hook for that too. And John brought to a point just a run through the farm, and there's 2 of them on my farm that they call a river, and or a creek, whatever, a water shed, and there's no more water ever runs through it. Never has in 175 years.
I got one of those.
Yeah, so it's but it's certainly designated on a map and whatever, and So that kind of tells me that conservation authorities have kind of overdone they're trying to build their own little bailiwick, and that's very obvious by what they're doing over in the CVCA is doing over at the lake. So I won't go on with that because it's very evident what's happening there.
Well, and in fact, all of the commenting agencies have done exactly what you just described. And that's why I think they need to step up their game, and they need to be called to account on this stuff. And given the fact that now there are tighter deadlines to make decisions on this, or the CVC isn't going to lose a deposit. The Nottawasaga isn't going to lose any deposit. The
They're
NEC.
still going to come in January for their levy.
Sorry.
Yeah. They're still going to come in January for their levy from the township. So
Well, yeah,
you're right. They're not going to lose it. But
that is a constant. That's for sure. So, but I think there is a solution to this, and I talked with John Creelman about this yesterday. David, sorry, because I do have a suggestion, and the Mayor Creelman and I talked about this, and he suggested that we pass something on to council about it. But David, before I get to that, did you have something else to say with all of the discussion that's gone on here?
Yeah, just to clarify that the decision-making authority still rests with council for all matters of the Planning Act, other than what's been delegated. And of course, traditionally, Committee of Adjustment, that hasn't changed. Some councils deal with Committee of Adjustment stuff. Many others have a separate Committee of Adjustment, as do we, to deal with that decision-making requirement. But there are the timeline deadlines with Bill 109, right? So how do we make sure that we always meet those deadlines? That's going to be a challenge, period. And then the other aspect is what's been delegated to staff. So site plan control approval, lifting of a hold. I can explain that. It's not that difficult of a concept. Minor zoning amendments and delegation of or temporary use bylaws. I'll start with lifting of a hold. Lifting of a hold is like a padlock.
David, sorry, I'm not sure we need to get into those technical details, or do you think that we do?
I can be brief. I can be very brief for the sake of it. So a hold it's like a padlock that's put on a zoning approval that isn't unlocked until the applicant has or does certain things. So an example would be a piece of land that's good for development, has very good appropriate planning aspects to it, but there isn't full municipal services yet. They're not far. They're a couple of years away. The lock stays on that ability to develop until the services actually come to the site. And when they do, whoever pays for them, the developer or the municipality through a capital initiative, the lock can come on. The hold is released. The developer can now be shovel ready. A temporary use.
So what's changed with regard to that?
That council can delegate that authority to lift the hold to a staff member or a committee.
And authority to put a hold on?
No. Release a hold. Take off a hold.
Who puts the hold on, and how, with what abandon
Council.
can you use that to help you with your deadlines?
So, well, I'm not sure it helps with the deadlines. If a hold is being put on an application that is considered has merit and is approved by a council, there's just other things awaiting that are necessary for that development to happen.
Right. So it's like a hydrological evaluation.
It's a hook. It's a trigger, right? So the example I gave is a good one. It's a site is good for development. The nature of the development's good, but it needs the gas in the tank. It needs the servicing, if you will, before it can be shovel ready.
Why can't a hold be extended on the basis of environmental impacts that are not yet understood? For example, someone comes in and they have the right to build a house, and it's in a significant woodland or something like that, and it's close to a
Okay.
stream, and it's in the middle of the winter, and we know that, you know, nobody can even get onto the ground and look at any environmental impacts until the
Could.
spring and summer. I mean,
You could.
could we use a hold for that?
You could. You could. I mean, I think most councils would work with an applicant and say, it's premature. How about we bring this file back in the spring when you actually do the environmental study?
That sounds creative. That sounds
Okay,
creative.
but a hold could be used in that example. But let's get off hold. That's a hold.
David, I really wanted to keep this discussion specific to planning committee and what we're going to do. Planning committee never had anything to do with removing holds. Yes, that's
No.
part of 109.
No, but they could.
No, David, with all due respect, that's not something that we're going to get involved with. That might be something you're going to get, but
Okay.
I really want to keep this discussion specific to what the
Okay.
planning committee and the effects that it might have on that. You have a
Okay.
whole long list of things that might change
No,
your life.
three things. But
Well,
to your point, Bob. So
if
so
they don't have anything to
council-
do with a planning committee, you know, then
well, I do. So just hear me out then. I'll be brief.
okay.
I can deal with lifting of holds. It's not that hard. They either meet the check boxes to lift it or they don't. The other one is temporary use bylaws. Now, they can be very simple or they can be contentious. A temporary use is for somebody who wants to do something, add a use to a property that's otherwise not permitted for a short period of time. So a good example would be in New Tecumseh, they've done this. They have changed, but at one point, if you wanted to put a second house or house on your property for your aging parents, you have to have a certain minimum lot size. I think it was 10 acres. They went through a temporary use to allow the second house on the back of the property connected to the same services. When mom and dad died and went to heaven, it had about a 2 or 3 year window. It could be extended, but once the parents died and went to heaven, the temporary use was required to cease. Okay, there were some caveats to it, but essentially that's what that was. A more contentious, and that's easy for me to do.
And that's something the planning committee never had anything to do with.
Not previously.
No, and we likely aren't going to under the Bill 109 either.
Okay, I'm just I'm just letting committee know what Bill 109 allows to be done. So that's a second thing, temporary use bylaws. Now, that was a simple one. I need a second house for my aging parents for a period of time. A more complex one, notwithstanding what you've just said, Bob, just hear me out, would be a wedding venue. I have this wonderful property at Highway 9 and 4th Line. I'm not making a value judgment. And I know there might be issues here with local residents. So I'm going to ask council for a temporary use for a wedding venue. And and they denied it, and you can go read the reports. I recommended denial as well.
We had a meeting on that. We spent
you did
discussing that one.
You did. That's right. We did. That applicant, just to pick on that applicant for a minute, could have said, I think this is going to be a little contentious in front of your committees and council and your residents. I'm going to ask council for a 2-year temporary use. And council, if you allow me to do that, and if I come out squeaky clean after 2 years, I might come back to you to say, now make it permanent. If I'm not squeaky clean and residents have issues along the way, council can say your 2 years are up, Mr. You know who it was, you're done. Temporary use is done. That's a more contentious temporary use bylaw. It remains with council unless through Bill 109, a committee is willing to take it on with being as conferred by council or a staff member. Okay, last one is, a minor zoning amendment. So let's go back to our commercial land. Doug, the developer. Doug owns a commercially zoned piece of land, highway commercial. and it has the laundry list of commercial uses, but he wants to add another commercial use, which is, you know, pretty much a commercial, highway commercial use. It's just not on the list. Dave, it's not on your list. It's not permissible, but I want to add it into the basket of highway commercial uses. That would be a simple minor zoning amendment. Councils across Ontario under Bill 109 can confer that responsibility to a committee or a staff member, or they can keep it themselves. Okay. So I've heard what you've had to say, Bob. I think I can deal with lifting of hold provisions. That's pretty simple. I'm apt to, unless committee, and we can come back and deliberate this a bit more if needed, but I'm hearing Bob saying I don't want to deal with it, which is fine. If the committee said, well, let's think about that. Let's think about whether we want the authority to make a decision on minor zoning amendments and or temporary use bylaws. That's sort of what's up for consideration tonight, as well as, of course, bring to your attention the timelines and how we're thinking we're going to need committee to be part of the pre-consultation process. So I don't want you to shoot the messenger. I'm looking for solutions here.
Dave, I'm not. But we're not going to make that decision tonight. We're not going to say, council, give us approval. All of this, we are a committee of council. We do what they ask us to do. If we say no, well, you know, we want to approve minor zoning variances. You know, we're relying on council deciding what planning committee is going to do or not going to do. If they tell us that, yeah, we want you to do that, well, that's fine. We'll pick that ball up and run with it. But we don't know that yet. And those are the discussions you've got to have with council and get them to make a decision about who they want to do what. Right now, as I say, we're like a commenting agency, and you know, we're the first line of residents commenting on applications and the like, and then to give those recommendations to council. So Dave, I don't know.
Let me add one more thing, if I may. Let's go back to site plans. So I've already got delegated authority to approve site plans, and I know site plans very well. However, if I were to get a site plan that's contentious and or complex, I can say to the applicant, you know, I think council needs to see this. And as the term was used again in Barrie, it was bumped up to council. So delegated site plan authority has already been granted through Bill 109 to me. But if I find a contentious, not necessarily complex, but something that could be a bit contentious, I have the ability to say, you know what, no, I don't want to make this decision. I am bumping it back up to council. They make the decision. The same can be said for those other matters. If there were a contentious lifting of a hold, I can't imagine one that would be, it can be bumped back up. Same with temporary use, same with minor zoning amendments. I think it boils down to those two, the temporary use and the minor zoning amendments. The lifting of a hold to me is a no-brainer. The site plan control is already in the bag. I don't know if a decision or I don't want to say decision, but some direction from committee is in hand on those two items, or whether you totally embrace taking them on as the current committee, or whether you say, you know what, no, we can leave those two things with council. It's kind of option A, B, or C on those two key matters, other than deadlines. I guess the only thing Susan, you've been sitting there, you've been involved in this. Is there anything more you want to add that we haven't already, just to get full context on this?
Well, David, can I just offer, Mr. Chair, that David, rather than, telling the committee tonight that, oh, you got to take some decision on these things.
No, I said if there's a direction that you're leaning toward.
David, let John finish, please. John?
An alternative approach is when you have your new PENHC, as they're being brought up to speed on what's going on, if the situations of the day bring you to have, I don't know, you want some additional comment on some site plan controls that you're envisaging, and rather than thinking, oh, I'll bump that up to council, and council just says, oh, send it to PENHC, and then it just takes more time and whatnot. I mean, try something out, and bring a request for advice to the committee and see how it develops, and try and take it a little more organically than by just assuming in a single meeting you can bring everybody up to speed on these technicalities and get some intelligent decision on it.
Yes, you're right.
Just as a caveat, if it gets bumped to council's got to deal with it. They can't kick the ball back to committee. If it's bumped by staff or committee, it's council's issue to deal with as it is to make a decision.
And it's your choice to bring it to PENHC for advice before you do that. So it's your responsibility to use PENHC to support getting the best advice to council. And the job of PENHC is to get their best advice to council. So.
Absolutely.
I think that's what
You're right.
wants.
Sorry, Jerry.
No, I think that's what the council wants. Like John Grillman's very adamant that he wants input from the constituents, and I think that's the way to get it, John, for sure.
So John is right. We're not making any decisions tonight. David, you're presenting possibilities.
Yes.
And yes, those possibilities exist.
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't know.
Fair enough.
So again, moving forward, we don't know. But if council send us something, as we always have over almost 3 decades, we'll deal with it. Absolutely. That's what the planning committee does, and we will. So, but right now we don't know. But I mean, I'm glad you bring, David, I'm glad you bring these up. I'm sorry, I just want to be short on the detail of it, that some things may change, some things may not, Sorry, you had asked Susan for some input.
Well, she's been listening. She's been involved in a little bit of the crafting of part of this amendment. So I didn't have any other comments.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just typing away here trying to get the minutes. So, yeah, so the only thing I guess, or the main thing that we were focusing on right now is just that input from planning committee is going to hopefully come earlier in the process. And we have talked about that. You guys have mentioned some concerns which are really, really important, in that you wouldn't have comments from the other agencies to consider, which I hadn't actually thought about. So this is really helpful. But yeah, the whole thing, the whole consideration for us is how are we going to get all the important input and meet those deadlines. And I know David had said it's not going to break the bank for Mono, but I also think about like the administrative side of things. So so if we do have to be doing refunds and things like that, it is not going to be helpful for our day-to-day trying to keep everything going and keep everything organized. So we're definitely going to be trying to avoid that. We were going, and one other thing I just wanted to mention was that there was some talk about those refund deadlines being delayed till July. It was supposed to come, everything was supposed to come into effect on January 1st, 2023. And we've heard that that's been delayed by 6 months. I couldn't find any confirmation anywhere. I double checked again today. And we heard from Stan, right, David, that this has happened, but I still haven't found confirmation of that. So that will help us get everything organized, get our process in place, get that pre-consultation ironed out, including that very long checklist that we made. But yeah, lots of changes and lots of work going forward, but we're going to try to make the best of it. That's all for me.
Thank you, Susan.
Chair, Sure, Bob. I'm wondering, I mean, you don't want to drag this on. It's 8:15. We maybe want to talk a bit more on 23. I don't know that we have to. It is what it is. And John alluded to a lot of the key points: reduction of TCA, the changes to the conservation authority, so on.
David, I don't want to get into the specifics of what I don't want to get into those. That's not the point of this meeting.
That's fine by me.
That could take up a lot of time.
That's fine by me. And I did say at the beginning, I really want to focus on Bill 109. So I guess where we could, you've got my report from December 13th, which was a follow-up from November 8th. There's a lot there, but it boils down to the attachment, the proposed amendment 44, OPA 44, and more particularly Part B, because Part B in that whole amendment, that's the bits, as John knows through OPA 41, that's the bit that would actually amend the official plan. Part A is the preamble. Part C are the add-ons, just so everyone knows. I mean, I can feed you more slide deck information and the like from the province on both bills for bedtime reading. You don't have to take it. If you don't want it, that's fine. It may help assist you with going through Part B of that amendment, which is attached to my report. I don't know what else to say. I think, you know, Susan's alluded to sort of the key aspect of what we're trying to do here is that we feel we're going to have to get you involved sooner in the process to meet the deadlines. We don't really want to do that. We want to hear from you later on, but I don't know if that's logistically in the cards given these new deadlines.
Well,
Okay.
can I ask something, David?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got this OPA 44 in front of us, and I confess I have not done justice to it because I did not see this as on the agenda as being the focus of our discussion tonight. So I'm loath to give, you know, to wade into it very much. But I for example, I see there's like a page or more of a list of commenting agencies and requirements of you know, and I mean, it's all very nice to make this, but you know, given that there's new deadlines, have you been already in touch with all of these to ask them, you know, how do those new deadlines in the new bill affect your ability, and throw in Bill 23 as well, days of conservation authorities, affect your ability to deliver on these? And if so, great. If not, can you suggest alternative mechanisms of meeting that deadline? So rather than saying right off the top, how do we, you know, adopt this OPA? I mean, I have no idea whether or not you've been able to prove up your ability to get these in the deadlines that are being dictated. So how can I comment?
David, let me say this then, because there is a simple solution to this. And David, you and I have talked about this, and I talked with John Creelman about this yesterday. And it has, how many times have we had planning committee meetings and we didn't have information from the NEC or the MTO or the whatever, and we're there saying, well, without that we can't make a decision, and that because that's, you know, what we thought we needed, all of that kind of stuff, and that's frustrating. And you know, I was in private industry, and you know, when we got a request for a proposal from somebody, the city of Toronto, and there was a deadline of Thursday, January 19th at 12:01 p.m. And if you didn't have your proposal into them by 12:01, then it was null and void. It didn't exist. And this is something I've talked with David about it. There's been a reluctance to do this, but this is what I talked with David about. I talked with John Creelman yesterday, and John asked me to propose something to council because John, you bring up a good point. All of these commenting agencies, they have to be called to account, and they have to step their game up and get the information back within the timely manner. Because as I said before, the NEC isn't gonna be refunding money. or the others. So I wrote this down, and this is what I'm hoping that we will pass on to council. And you know what, I can send this to you tomorrow email. But
Okay.
this is regarding planning application deadline dates. And it reads this way: in order to ensure that planning applications are passed within the required deadlines and to avoid any financial penalties to the town of Mono, PENHC recommends that council direct the planning department to set the necessary deadline date and to advise all commenting agencies of the deadline date they must submit their comments by. Second paragraph, if any commenting agencies do not submit their comments by the deadline date, it will be determined that they have no opinions regarding the application. To avoid any uncertainty, this condition and the firm deadline date will be communicated in writing to the commenting agencies when they are asked for comments. Now, some may say, well, that's pretty heavy-handed, but you know what? Again, the town has a deadline. They must do it. So Creelman asked me, so all I'm doing is suggesting we pass this, which is passing it on to council, who are going to pass a similar thing, directing the director of planning for that. John?
I commend you on a well-written resolution that will deal with the mechanics of how to deal with commenting agencies. But I ask myself, how does that get us better advice and better decisions with regard to the environment or natural heritage as they may be impacted by applications? So while I admire that, I mean, it basically says, well, if we know nothing, well, then we can do whatever we like based on opinion. But I would love it if you might add to your resolution something along the lines of, we would also ask council to request of the planning department to seek in either individually or in concert with other Dufferin municipalities and or the county, alternate
Solutions.
means of access to professional, technical, environmental advice as may be required through the deliberations of PENHC and the planning department and council.
That's a great addition. Absolutely a great addition.
Susan, are you writing that down, or are you just going to take it from the audio?
Well, Susan has that taped, so she could
Susan,
puzzle
is that all right with you?
And then if we were agreed that it could be, shared with everybody tomorrow and everybody has a look at it and says, okay, then we'll see it.
So is that okay?
I'll never be able to put those words back in the same order.
Well, I'm just wondering, why don't you and Bob maybe confer afterwards, and then Bob can send out the email as well, like a revised, friendly amended.
But I'm relying on Susan to craft something first as a straw dog, because my first comments this evening had to do with the same matter.
Absolutely.
Are you okay with that approach,
Help
Susan?
ourselves get the best advice that we can get to pass on to council.
Okay.
And so here's the solution. Here's the solution. Susan, I have what I read in a Word document. As soon as this meeting is over, I'm going to email that to you. You've got John's word. You've got John's words, which I did not write down, but I'm going to email you the Word document of those 2 paragraphs that I wrote. You can add John's to it. I saw Barbara nodding that she agreed that I think John's addition was good.
Do you need it as a motion?
Well, I was going to move this motion, which would then go to council. Yes.
Okay,
So just a couple of things, if I may. It might be more expeditious if you copy John, he can add his bit and then forward it back to Susan. Just a thought.
No. Don't put it on me. I'm just
No.
trying to react here.
Well, no, I just don't know what wording you want, John.
Provide it to us. We can all have a go at getting it the way it should be.
No, we're not going to do that. John, hang on. John, I think the way you said that was very well said. Susan, you've got the tape of it. You can transcribe exactly what John's words were. I had no issue with his words. We're not going to go round and around and around and back and forth on this. So if I send you the email document with what I said, you add John's to it, and then we're done.
Yeah, and
Okay.
you may want to revise it, and I think that's fine. But what we'll do is we'll send it out as a draft to the committee, give you a deadline.
That's great.
Make comment on it.
And so I would make that resolution as amended.
Perfect. Barbara, will you second that?
absolutely.
Perfect.
And we
All in
postdated that till
favor?
tomorrow.
Jerry, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yep, for
Good.
sure.
So,
Susan,
just
okay.
kind of a
She
clarity.
can read the tape until I did it.
Last bit of dialogue. Actually, John, that's an interesting approach, because what you're saying is if we don't see ourselves getting timely comments, and we'll pick on MTO here for the moment from MTO, maybe we require an applicant to have an objective traffic engineer provide comments that MTO would otherwise provide.
That's an approach. That is the one approach. And the second approach, though, is it's about time the county of Dufferin grew up and hired the professional staff and organized land use planning the way every other upper tier municipality in Southern Ontario has grown up to do it. It's outrageous, and we need to get with the program. So it's not all downloaded on Mono. Everything gets downloaded. It's just crazy.
Well, I appreciate that observation, and I mean, I can't take that up with Dufferin, as you know, that's a council initiative, but that's true. Now, let me just say this.
That's one of the options. Is the consultant, is the applicant pays and organizes it, and we review it, and or the county, or we seek the consensus of how our other municipal partners are going to approach the same problem and look for a good.
Just a couple of caveats for your context and clarity. The issue about municipalities ask that question of the problem. Whatever we're waiting, whatever, where these deadlines are approaching and we haven't heard from our conservation authority or the NEC or MTO, what do we do? If they don't meet the deadlines for comments, you move on and you take your application or the applicant's.
I understand that, and that's Bob's point of his resolution. All I'm adding to it is we want to do good planning. So we want to have good advice.
Let me finish, John. Let me finish. So that's that, which is what Bob referenced. And that application goes to council. And particularly where there's material comments expected from one of those agencies, but regardless, the council of the day would riskily approve it and more likely deny it. Now, Toronto, just by way of example, City of Toronto has already crafted, so I understand, template reports, whether it's zoning amendment, official plan amendment, site plan, you name it, for automatic denials if the deadlines are approaching. Why? Because they don't want to refund the fees. So if they say to council, didn't get enough, didn't hear from MTO, didn't hear from this, didn't hear from that, deny it, which is a trigger on appeal automatically to the board, as you know.
David, that is one approach, but please, I really want to end this discussion now, because we could talk about this all night long. But what we're talking about is fundamentally requiring commenting agencies to do their jobs in a timely manner where the town of Mono will not be negatively affected in that. So at this point, and yes, I heard this on the radio that they're just the town Toronto's going to deny it. I don't want to talk about that, quite frankly, because we're Mono, and that what I would like to do is we could talk about this all night long, and I don't want to. I think we've got a very good motion here with the addition of what John said, and that. So we're going to pass this. This is a recommendation to council. PENHC recommends that council direct. So this is going to go to council, and they're going to decide whether this is a good idea. And I can tell you this, that John Creelman sure said, Bobby, if you can do this, send that to us. Perfect. So,
just for clarity though, I was just picking on Toronto. Many municipalities are lining up for refusal, recommend denial.
That's quite possible, David. It's quite possible.
And municipalities have professional technical advisors and consultants who are giving them good planning advice at the same time. We lack all of that.
So we're going to require the commenting agencies to give their comments by a deadline, and if they don't, well, so you know what? I think we've talked about this enough. We've already moved a motion on this. We've seconded it. We've passed it. Again, as soon as we finish here, and it is time to finish, I'm going to send this off to Susan, and everybody will have it tomorrow, and that will be sent on to council. And Dave, you can talk with council about this. So
will do.
But no, I understand. But every municipality is going to deal with it. If they don't do something like what we're suggesting here, well, then shame on them. Because as far as I'm concerned, frankly, just denying things, that's just a cop out. So anyhow, but that's another issue. That's another issue. So sorry, Jerry.
The other thing that we've got to remember whenever they went regional government. Well, be careful what we get, I guess, when we say about what Dufferin County does for us and doesn't do for us. I agree with John 100%. But in the regional governments, it made a little bit difference in the last 10 or 15 years how we worked out, and I guess we're fortunate in that we get to make some of the decisions here that don't get made in other municipalities because it's all delegated upper tier sort of thing. So we should.
I agree.
Just to your point, Jerry, there were many upper tiers that now have had their upper tier planning review responsibilities taken away from them. York, Durham, Niagara, Peel, and Simcoe County. I might have missed a few. Waterloo, I'm not sure. Dufferin was excluded. So all those upper tiers I just mentioned, York, Dufferin, Durham, Peel, Simcoe County, Halton, do not deal with Planning Act reviews of lower tier applications, just so you know.
Thank you for that information and that, but we're dealing with Mono Planning Committee in the town of Mono and that, so all of the rest of that is it's news, but let's move on, because I think we've had a good discussion about all of this. We'll get that motion, Susan. I know she's very good. We'll get that out tomorrow. Active planning applications. If you want to see active planning applications, go on the town website. They've done Dave and the planning department have done a good job. They're all there. There's nothing immediate, and that. But with that in mind, and that, please keep the third Thursday of every month in your planner. Who knows? The deadline for people putting their names in is January 30th. Council likely will not have decisions on this in time for the third Thursday of February. All committees remain intact until we're replaced with somebody new. So we may well have the current group in a February meeting. So please keep that in mind. On one other thing here, other business, and then I'll ask you. I just wanted to let you know, years ago, we used to have a council member on the planning committee. I remember it many. Jerry, you will remember Karen Rosenbrock was on it. We have had many planning committees in the last 3, 4, 5, maybe even, where there was no council member. This council, there are 2 who asked to be on the planning committee. So we likely, the planning committee for the next 4 years, I will have 1 council member on it, as do other committees. So I just wanted to let you all know that. In talking with John, there were 2 council members that said they wanted to be on it. I said to John, only 1, because this is a committee of residents, and that the council members, they'll have their chance to comment on everything.
And yes, well, anyway, no, I won't say anything. No.
Okay, but I just want to let you know, we are a committee of council. We'll have no say in whether we have a council member on or not. I'm gonna let you know it's gonna happen. And that, like it or not, maybe that affects your decision whether you want to be on the council. It worked fine before, so, but I wanted to let you know that. Any other business, John? Did you want to talk more about that Dufferin County thing, or are we going to wait for Susan and Dave to figure out what's really going on?
It's okay. I would just, as I think was suggested, unless David knows otherwise, if anybody wants to show up at 12 o'clock at the county offices in Orangeville, I'm sure you can talk your way in and have a look at the schedules and talk to people.
Okay.
There's, I believe from noon till 1, the maps will be on foam core boards, mini billboards, if you will, on easels, hard copy to kick the tires on, take a look at. And then from 1:30 to 3.
I'm assuming that the creators of those schedules and those maps will be there to speak to them.
One would hope the architects show up, yes.
Yeah, they are consultants, so they'll want to be paid for that time. Yeah.
However, yeah, lieu and time, time and lieu. 1:30 to 3 will be a live presentation recorded. Now, just for your information, I talked to Mark. I said, you need me to go or not? I will if you need me. He said, Dave, you put your reports in front of council. You took 2 letters to Dufferin County saying this is what should be OPA 4137. They've accepted it. I believe all the changes have been made. Cross my fingers on that. I said emphatically my second letter, make sure they're all done before January the 21st, which is a Saturday. And Mark said, Dave, I don't think you need to go. So I probably won't be there. I don't think I need to be, and I might just sort of get in the way. I think it's best maybe that it be a public event. I believe Fred Nix is going. I'm sure John Creelman will go. I don't know about others. I just don't know at this point. Anyway.
Can I ask you, David? I mean, I checked the Natural Heritage schedule, and it's in sync. So I'm a happy camper. I was hoping, however, because I've been involved with it for so long now with Dufferin, that I might get confirmation that you're satisfied that the agricultural schedule is also in sync, in conformity with Mono's.
I believe it is now. Yes, Susan, have we got the revised schedules again from Silva or not? I just can't remember. I've had so much in my brain.
Yeah, so they've been revising them all week, as I understand,
Right.
and they're going to be making final edits right up until end of day Friday, I think.
Right.
Yeah, so I think
believe it or not. Yeah.
I think agriculture
I
and
know.
natural heritage are good. they were still doing some tweaks on that employment or on the schedule.
Right.
So I just make the comment, I am going to go so that I can see what, and I'll take my maps with me so I can
No,
see
please do.
whether it's a sync, because these guys are so incompetent. And I mean, thank God Jake's around to straighten him out. I mean, it's been fantastic from that point of
Well,
view.
and
But
Susan
someone needs to,
and me as well.
somebody needs to go and check on the agricultural map, because
Mhm.
somebody in the public meeting may well say, oh, there's a problem with it. And if there's no one there to say, yeah, we know there's a problem and it needs fixing and there's a promise to fix it, it'll just cause more pandemonium, more confusion.
Well,
Oh,
up
just
until a
to
day
say-
ago, sorry, Susan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the other thing that they have told us is that they're hoping to get feedback from the public, and if there are issues, that's totally fine, and that there's more revisions to be done. So, yeah, just to say
That's the
that,
way they're-
right? Like that's,
Okay.
yeah.
Something has happened between Dufferin County and WSP. WSP are a big organization, and for some bizarre reason, they pasted all the aggregate extraction sites across Dufferin as employment. And as you, John, know, and Bob, I think you as well would know, that's a temporary use, however long it might be under the provincial policy statement. In other words, once all the aggregate is gone, you put back some soil and turn it back into farmland and not another employment use. And how that got missed, I have no idea. But apparently it's under correction if it's not finally totally corrected for mono. And the same with resort designation. So in other words, those two should not be labeled employment at the upper tier.
Okay, well,
And Jake's done a great job of digitizing to find those incongruencies from the first two, Primag and
The province shouldn't allow an upper tier municipality to develop an official plan without having a land use plan. I mean, it's
John,
just,
you
I
know,
just want to say
John,
one more thing, sorry. John, just so you know too, that when they make those maps public on Friday, that's when we have a better ability, like for Jake to do overlays and for us to do overlays of our own. So that
check.
makes it a little easier to compare and check. So it's going to be potentially after, definitely after Saturday that more tweaks may or may not need to be made. So.
well, that's great. And could I ask the favor of just keeping me informed of when Jake does those overlays, just so I can stay in the game around that and push as I do in county with and with WSP, just to see if they'll get them right.
And thank you for doing that.
one more thing to add. I don't want to belabor this meeting. I had asked Dufferin County, by the way, have you forwarded either of my two letters, October the 11th last year and January 12th this year, to the province? Because it reiterates what we've been saying about OPA 41 and 37. Nope, I haven't done that. We've changed the mapping, but they didn't get my letter. So I don't know. I mean, the province will make their decision.
Yeah.
You know that.
Just don't even talk to the province about it at this point. I mean, it's WSP is not here to solve problems. They're here to make money. So don't confuse the situation anymore. That's my advice: is let the province ask the question.
well, we can add what David just said to the long list of how Dufferin County is screwed up, and the long and growing list. But with that, let's. We're not accomplishing a lot here other than all getting frustrated. I wasn't going to go to this event, but John, now that you say you're going to be there with your maps and that, I'm thinking maybe I should go and see how you react if yours don't jive with theirs. I'm joking, John.
Well, the last version I saw, Jake had done his magic and had introduced them to the basics of mapping, which they were short of in WPS.
I'm sure it will all be fine, John. You've done a good job with that, and I know you're passionate about it.
Would you like a motion to adjourn?
I think we need that, yes. Yeah.
Only after you tell me, John, you read my letter of October the 11th.
I'm sure I have,
I
but
sang you phrases
I
in
don't
there.
keep it
So,
all in the front of my mind. So
well, you should print off a copy and put it on your wall. So
it's,
there we go.
that's the one where the town says that they will do what they promised to do.
That's the one where I said we had a very competent steering committee led by you to do the NHS.
I have
And
not.
you don't need
I'm
to
not.
question OP 41.
Thank you.
There you go. John moved to adjourn. Barbara, will you second that? Thank you. With that, we're out of here. Susan, as soon as I hang up on all of this, I'm sending you that Word document. And we'll all look forward to getting the one with the revision tomorrow. Thank you for your help with that.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year. David,
Yeah,
thank
Happy
you.
New Year,
Thank you
for sure.
for all your work on this. It's complicated and that we will sort it out. Everybody, I'll send another thing. Thursday, February 16th. Keep that in your calendar, please.
David, can you hear me?
That's good.
Is it all right
Yes.
if, I know you're busy,
Yes.
but I would like to send you a paragraph on this section 6 of the Bill 23, just to make sure I've got it right before I bring it up with the Heritage Committee.
You're going to put in an email?
Yeah,
Sure, Barb. Put in an email and I'll take a look at it.
okay, thank you very much.
What you said is kind of correct. They've definitely made they've made cuts to how properties are registered through Bill 23.
I think I've got it, but I just want to be 100% clear.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, you two can have that discussion. Thanks, everybody. David, thank you. Susan, thank you.
Thank
Barbara, Jerry, thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Yep. Keep well. Have a good night.
Bye for now.
Bye now.